All right, so we are starting our 5 core values. Now, here's what I want you guys to understand. I had somebody years ago in one of my classes that said, well, I wish you'd spent more time on the model. The model is listen, learn, lead. It's a model. How many of you guys have ever have taken a suicide intervention class? How many? So we got a few folks. There's various models out there. I like my model that I wrote. I spent some time working on it and developing this model called Listen, Learn, Lead. I think it's a good model. We've trained 30,000 people on this model now. But it's just a model. It's just like a baseball bat is just a baseball bat. And there are various types of baseball bats. And some professional baseball players like Louisville Slugger, some like Rollins, some like some of the ones I can't even pronounce the names on because they're made somewhere in Italy or something. And so there are various baseball bats. But once you get up to the plate, the thing that is really most important is your technique. It's your fundamentals. And so we're going to be talking about more of the fundamentals, which I call the core values. I believe that is more important than you pick whatever model you want. Pick whatever bat you want to play softball or baseball with. It doesn't matter as long as you know how to stand in the plate and swing when the ball comes. And that's the whole point of what I'm trying to say there. So I hope that's a good analogy. I've never used that one before, Mike, in our training. But that's the reason that we focus more on the core values than we do the model. The model's important, but there's a lot of them out there. Pick a model, hold on to the core values, swing the bat. Y'all hear what I'm saying? Just swing the bat. Ask the question. So core value number 1, suicide is not the result of wanting to die. We'll do a deep dive on all of these. I'm just going to line them up for you. So core value number 1, core value number 2, suicide is a thought. Core value number 3, suicide makes sense. Core value number 4, life is full of questions, isn't it? Oh my goodness, we're going to see that today. Core value number 5, it's not what you look at that matters. It's not what you look at that matters. So now let's deep dive on the first one. Suicide is not the result of wanting to die. I've done over 2,000 suicide interventions, and I will tell you, this may sound really strange. I've never met anybody that really wanted to die. Never. Nobody just wakes up and says, I think I'll kill myself today. It just doesn't happen. It is not in our DNA to want to die. Suicide is not the result of wanting to die. So what is it? Well, the reality is suicide is the result of loss. It's always the result of loss. It's not a desire. It's not something in it. It's something that we feel like we've lost in ourselves. Suicide is the result of loss. And it's such a loss that it leads to hopelessness. And that hopelessness is so overwhelming in the moment, I would add, in the moment, that you feel like it's the only option. So suicide's the result of loss that leads to hopelessness. And the good book that I read says that without hope, people perish. People perish. And so it's always a result of loss. Even when we can't see it with our physical eyes. The loss of mental health is an invisible loss that may not manifest in a physical form, but it's still a loss. It's just like 3 months ago, March, I went for my annual physical for my birthday. Doctor said, you're fine. In April, I'm having to rush to the hospital, thought I was having a heart attack and had to have a stent put in because I had a 95% blockage. I didn't know I was in trouble. And mental health, you can be losing your mental health and not know it in the moment. And then you hit that wall and you feel like it's the only option. And then you begin to have thoughts of suicide, but you didn't wake up one day and say, I think I'll kill myself today. It's a buildup of things that come, and then eventually it hits you and you feel like it's the only option. And I'm very straightforward with people when I'm working with them, and if they, especially if they've used that word, I just felt like it was the only option. I want to talk to you about options. Let's talk about that. Let's just drill down on that. And you don't have to be Dr. Phil. You don't have to have a PhD to be a friend. That's what I want you guys to understand. And in fact, the best type of counseling, as my counselor can probably tell you, is just conversation. Just talking with people. Being a friend to them. And so we want to have that conversation. You don't have to be a PhD to do that. Let's just talk about what you think options are. Right? I was in real estate. I know what options are. You can buy an option on a house, and that gives you the right to sell it or buy it or tear it down or rent it out or live in it if you decide to exercise that option. But when it comes to suicide, you act on that option, there are no more options. So suicide is not an option. Suicide's an option ender. It ends all of your other options. And I don't think that's really what you want. So let's talk about some other options. See, it's not confrontational, just telling the truth, and the truth will set you free. So let's discuss the truthfulness of suicide being an option. It's not really an option. It is, in fact, an option ender. It ends all of your other options. So be truthful, be frank, be truthful, be loving, be kind, but speak the truth and help people to start thinking about things like this. So that's core value number one. Core value number two, finish this sentence with me. Suicide is a thought. Suicide is a thought. I had a young lady named Ashley. I can share her name because she's actually been in my classes before and shared her story like Mike did this morning. But when Ashley was 13 years old, she heard me speaking one Wednesday night at a church, and I had 20 minutes with the young folks, and after the message and after all the other events, she came running up to me, making a beeline to me, and she wanted to talk to me. She waited for everybody else to peel off, and then she stood right in front of me and she says, I realize tonight that my life is at risk. Now, here's a myth. I put it in her head, didn't I? No, I did not. I did not put that thought in her head. I did not put the thought in her. Well, she realized tonight you're talking about suicide, so you gave her the thought of suicide. No, that's not true. You can't force somebody to think about suicide under normal conditions. Now, you could torture somebody into becoming suicidal, but just to have a conversation is not going to plant the seed in their mind. It is not in our DNA to want to die. Suicide's not the result of wanting to die. We just looked at core value number one. But it would sort of be like, well, here's the reality. During the break, I went out and brought my pet rattlesnake in because I forgot I left him in the car, and but he got loose, and I think he's somewhere back behind that table over here. No, I don't have a pet rattlesnake, and I may be a Baptist preacher, but I don't handle snakes. So, but here's the thing. If you didn't realize that the snake was in the room, does that decrease the risk? No, it increases the risk, right? It increases the risk. When I know the snake is in the room, I know I don't want to get in that corner of the room, right? And maybe my law enforcement person here can, if she's carrying a weapon today, she can help rid us of the snake, right? Awareness does not increase risk. Awareness decreases risk. So, what has this got to do with suicide as a thought? Well, Ashley was 13 years old when we did the intervention on her at a church on a Wednesday night. I talked to her mother that night. I talked with the youth minister that night. We got her in touch with the school counselors. We made a referral to a mental health professional. And my wife became part of her peer support. And so my wife would meet with her on a monthly basis just to make sure she was okay. She was doing good. But at 15, my wife called me and said, I've got Ashley here. She wants to talk to you. And so I said, hey, Ashley, how are you? She said, first thing she ever said, she said, have you ever heard of Hemingway? How many of y'all have heard of Hemingway? How many of y'all know what happened to Hemingway? He took his life. Ernest Hemingway took his life. And I said, Ashley, I sure have. I know all about Hemingway, and your last name is not Hemingway. And she said, yeah, but we're just alike. We're just alike. He's had 5 or 6 family members that took their life. I've had 5 or 6 family members that took their life. It's inevitable that I'm going to take my life. It's been predetermined. It's fate, right? Y'all have heard that word before? And I said, Ashley, hold on. Remember what we learned a few years ago. Suicide is a thought. She finished the sentence. She remembered what we had taught her. Suicide's a thought. That's all it is. That's all it is. Because we don't have to act on it. We don't. So here's the rest of the story if you want to fill in the blank. Suicide is a thought. And like any thought, I don't have to act on it, but I can talk about it. And in talking about it, I'm not going to increase the risk. In fact, I'm going to decrease the risk. That's why the Bible says there's wisdom in godly counsel. That's why we got some counselors here today. And I'm thankful for that. I've got several counselors in my life. I've got several friends and peers in my life. I could call Rhonda or Mike day or night, 24 hours a day. If I'm in trouble, they're going to help me. And what are we going to do? We're going to talk. We do that a lot, in fact, don't we, Mike? We talk. So you don't increase the risk by talking about a tough subject. You decrease the risk. So like any thought, we don't have to act on it. So let's talk about your thoughts of suicide. And so I'm talking to Ashley and I said, so are you having thoughts of suicide again? She said, yeah. Okay, it's just a thought. Sherry's there with you. Talk to her. If you need to call me this week, give me a call. But it's just a thought. Remember that. We don't have to act on it. Let me ask you a question very quickly. How many of you in this room, be honest, have always acted on every thought you have? Anybody? There's nobody in here? What's wrong with y'all? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we don't act on all of our thoughts. If we did, we'd all be in jail, right? Because we all have contrary thoughts. We all have thoughts that could get us in trouble. Remember what we said a moment ago. Feelings are not for doing. Feelings are for thinking. We got to think about what we think about. So think about things. We don't act on every thought. Never will. Never have, never will. And suicide is just a thought. I don't have to act on it. Yes, a deep, dark, heavy, ugly thought. But I don't have to act on it. I just don't. Let's just talk about it. And when we talk about it with somebody else, instead of trying to keep it to ourselves as if it's some stigma associated with it, I don't want people to know that I've got this mark on me. You know, stigma, by the way, it comes from the Latin, which means stigmata, which means a mark. It's actually, if you look at the crucifixion of Jesus, it was the stigmata in his hands and feet. It was the mark. And we don't want people to know that our mind is all marked up with all this stuff, and so we don't share it with people. But we need to. That's the courageous thing to do. Haven't we already talked about that? It's a courageous thing to talk about the marks in your life. You got to. So, talk about it. You know, a very transparent person. And I've had terrible thoughts. How many of y'all have ever had terrible thoughts? I've had terrible thoughts. My wife called me one night and I was headed home. She said, can you stop by Kroger and pick up the biggest thing, a powdered Tide that you can. It's a man thing. It's just one item I need you to get, right? So that's a man. Some of y'all men, we know what the women are talking about, right? Women are going, amen to that. It's a man thing. I can only do one thing at a time. So, yep, get the Tide. Anything else? No, that's all you can probably handle. So, okay. So I went to Kroger, went to the detergent line, got the big old thing of Tide. I'm headed to the checkout lane where it was 10 items or less. There's a lady standing there. Everything else was computer self-checkout, right? I like to be in front of people. And so I'm headed to the lady who was standing in the 10 items or less lane trying to help people. Unfortunately, there was this little lady coming the opposite way who also wanted to deal with a real human being. She had way more than 10 items in her cart. And, you know, it's always a iffy thing when you catch somebody's eye. They're thinking the same thing. And she literally started speeding up. And she cuts me off. So you go ahead, ma'am, right? And I'm standing behind her with 15 pounds of Tide. Now, I'm a Georgia Bulldog, but I wanted to roll Tide all over her head that day. But I didn't do it. Why? It's just a thought. Yeah, we all have these nasty, ugly, mean thoughts. We don't have to act on them. Suicide is just a thought. So that's the core value number 2 there. So let's look at the third one. Suicide makes sense. Now this one, I got to tell you guys, this one really got a jolt out of a lot of people a few years ago. It was actually January 2016. You remember the man that had the dog, the picture, and I was 50 yards away the day he died? Well, my name got in the local paper. I was the second one on the scene. I did the funeral. And it's rush hour traffic. Peachtree City's bad no matter what time of the day you're there, but rush hour traffic at 54 and 74 is bad, right? And so over the course of 2 weeks, I ended up doing 50 counseling sessions for people that were traumatized at the red light. Some of those I was doing at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Zoom because that's the only time they could do it. Because, well, one of them texted me, said, can we talk now? I said, yeah, I'm not coming to your house. Are you suicidal? No, I can't sleep. So we're 2 o'clock in the morning on Zoom, 6 o'clock in the morning after somebody got off work at Delta. I'm meeting them at Waffle House. 2 weeks of that, 50 counseling sessions. Clinicians will tell you that's a big caseload in 2 weeks. That's a big caseload, especially with all the trauma that I'm dealing with myself. And so after 2 weeks, my wife, one night I called her. I was headed home about 11 o'clock, and I know Fayette County like the back of my hand. I pulled into a parking lot because I didn't know where I was at. And I called her and said, I don't know how to get home. My mind was literally shutting down. She said, well, just go down Ginger Cake and turn right and turn left and you'll be home. And when I got home, she said, oh my gosh, are you having a stroke? My right eye was totally, it wasn't just bloodshot. The blood vessels had ruptured. I was so tired. It was just totally red. And she was up watching the news and I said, I'm going to splash my face off and go to bed. But before I laid down, I put a message on Facebook. Somebody asked me in one of my classes, why in the world did you do that? Well, I did that because my mind was shutting down and I wasn't thinking appropriately. Had I been in my right mind, I would not have done what I did. But the only thing I was doing was posting my third core value. That's all I did. I got 3,700 friends on Facebook, and so I posted Suicide makes sense. 3 words, that's all I did. And then I didn't just lay down, I turned my phone off. Because I didn't want any more 2 o'clock in the morning calls. I said, I'm done for this week. No more calls. I'm going off the radar. No more calls this week. And it wasn't 5 minutes later, my wife yells out, "What did you do?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She said, "The sheriff's headed to the house." What? Yeah. Turn your phone on. If you're not listening to your phone, not dinging off the roof. So I turned my phone back on. It takes a minute for it to warm up. It turned back on. I went to Facebook. Do y'all know what the New York Stock Exchange ticker symbols, how they move really fast? I'm like, oh my gosh. The sheriff's headed to my house. I got 10 other friends headed to the house. Somebody's like, I can't reach him. Oh my gosh, the suicide guy is in trouble. And it wasn't 2 minutes later, less than 2 minutes, my phone rang. And the guy on the other end, he's out of breath. He's like, "Is this a voicemail?" "No." "Oh, thank God you're still alive. We're headed to your house right now." "No, go home. I'm trying to go to bed." "You're not going to kill yourself?" "No, I'm not going to kill." "Well, why would you post that on Facebook? Suicide makes sense. You're scaring the whole town." Somebody posted it on the bubble. 38,000 people. You know, you got a whole city in Peachtree City coming to your house tonight for... I said, "No, I'm not going to kill myself." "Well, why would you do that?" I'm sorry, I'm tired, I shouldn't have done it. And that's when I knew I made a mistake. That's when I realized how tired I was, because I wasn't thinking appropriately. I was just doing something based on my feelings in the moment. You don't do things based on feelings. You think about your feelings and then you do things, right? If I'd been thinking appropriately, I would not have done it. Suicide is just a thought. Doing things that we shouldn't be doing, we got to think about it, right? So suicide makes sense for many people up until that moment when someone says, "Are you having thoughts of suicide?" And then in that moment, it doesn't make any more sense. Literally, it can happen that fast. It can make sense in one moment. And you've got a plan, and you know you're going to fulfill that plan, and then suddenly someone calls you out on it, and it doesn't make as much sense anymore. That's the power of godly counsel, for example. We got our clinicians here. They ask a question, and all of a sudden I'm seeing things the way I never saw them before. And so when someone calls us out and says, "Are you having thoughts of suicide?" Well, number one, now someone else knows. It's not just me, and it's not just in my head. Now that person understands what's going on in my head. I'm having those thoughts. Now I'm not having to carry those thoughts all by myself. Somebody else knows. And it really doesn't make as much sense as I thought it did. Because I really don't want to kill myself. No, you're right. I really don't want to kill myself. It's because of the loss that I've got in my life. There's this DNA inside of me when all that other stuff is going on. It says, I want to live, I want to live, I want to live. Go kick an anthill and see what happens. Man, they scatter, right? Why? They want to live. They're not going to sit there and say, "Hey, yeah, kick me, kick me." No, they scatter because it's in our DNA to want to live. And then when someone says, "Are you having thoughts of suicide?" that is the beginning of the installation of hope. That's where it begins. Because we're beginning to address the reality of where we're at. And then there's the possibility, if I know where I'm at right now, then maybe I can get to where I really want to be. And I want to have hope again. How many of y'all want to have hope? Sure. I think everybody in this room, we want to have hope. We may feel hopeless right now. A lot of kids feel hopeless today. But they want to have hope. Every one of us wants to have hope. So that's core value number 3. Suicide makes sense up until someone asks us. And that's the point where we can begin to dive into a conversation that moves that person, again, closer to the place of hope. Fourth core value, life is full of questions. More so than ever before, right? We've got questions now that we've never had before. You know, are we going to be around as a country a year from now, right? Some of y'all are thinking that. When COVID hit, we started having questions. Think about the questions that were asked during COVID. And again, this is not a political statement. I don't care whether you got the shot or didn't get the shot. But the questions that were asked back then were ripping families apart. Again, Greg, you and I are cousins, and Grandma calls us from Nashville and says, hey, you know, now that we're past all that pandemic stuff, y'all planning to come to the reunion this year? Oh yeah, I'll be there, Grandma. Well, there were several questions there. Are you coming to the reunion? Yeah, okay. Well, did you get the shot? Oh, I did. Well, what about Lou? No, he didn't get it. Oh, will you tell Lou he can't come for me? Those are questions, aren't they? Those questions literally ripped families apart. The politics today is ripping our society apart. We got all kinds of questions. Life is full of questions today. And those questions can be overwhelming to our senses because we don't know how to deal with the unanswerable questions of life. So life is full of questions, but the reality is this. Some questions are full of life. Some questions are full of life. And one in particular is this. And it sounds really contrary. Oh, that's a dark question. I don't think it's full of life. It is. It's the question of suicide. Are you having thoughts of suicide? That question is full of life. It's full of life. Because that's the place where we can begin to move back to hope. Now somebody knows. Now I'm no longer alone. I've got hope. So ask the questions that are full of life. Say it with me again. Are you having thoughts of suicide? Say that.
Are you having thoughts of suicide?
Man, y'all are doing good. That's good. Nice, solid, calm. Just ask the question. Here's another one. How many of y'all seen this picture before? How many of y'all see the elderly vagabond lady? Got a few? How many of y'all see the lady with the necklace on with a fur coat? How many of y'all don't see anything? Nobody going to raise their hand. So it's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. And for several years, I thought I had coined that phrase, and so I Googled it, and lo and behold, I wasn't the first person that said it. There's nothing new under the sun, by the way, right? So actually, it was Henry David Thoreau who said it first. I have not taken the time to read his book yet, but I know it's not about suicide. He wrote it in the 1800s while he was sitting on a pond up in Philadelphia of his friend Edgar Allan Poe. Anybody ever heard of him? And so he wrote a book called Walden, and he made this quote. It's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. I've been saying this for the past 12 years. This is the fifth and final core value and perhaps the most important of all. Sometimes the last thing we say is the most important, right? Y'all have heard that before? This is very important for us to understand. It's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. I was on a panel discussion just yesterday, and the question was asked of me, what's an important idea? And I said, what's the idea about all these signs? We look for signs, and we think that's the most important thing. And we see these signs, and then we interpret these signs according to our own observations. And sometimes we look at signs, especially at young people who are presenting signs, and we dismiss it. Well, and here's another myth. We've been talking about myth, right? Here's another myth, because there is an idea out there that says if they're showing signs, they're not serious. They don't really mean it. They're just acting out, especially if we're looking at a teenager. Oh, they're just wanting attention, or they're just manipulating. If they're showing signs, take it seriously. The EMT that sees a man turning blue and grabbing his chest and falling on the floor sees that as a sign, right? The lifeguard who sees a little child flailing in the riptide sees that as a sign. They are serious. Why is it that we go from what we can observe in the physical realm to when we go to the mental realm, we make something else up? It's not true. The same logic applies with our mental health, right? If you see the signs that someone is struggling, then they are probably very serious about the idea of suicide, and it is one last ditch effort to get somebody's attention. Why? Because I really don't want to die, but right now I think that suicide is the only option. That's what's going on. So yes, they are having thoughts of suicide, and if we don't intervene, or if we see the signs and discount those signs, we might actually be increasing the risk of suicide. Because once again, nobody took me seriously. They'll see one day how serious I am. Now, the other thing that we'll look at here in just a little bit is this idea that if there are no signs, then they are more serious. That stands to reason that that would be the flip side of the first one, right? If they don't show any signs, then they're more serious. But then you've got a problem. If I don't see the signs, then how do I know to do anything? Wow, I don't know. How do we do that? Well, we'll look at that here in just a moment. But it's not about the signs. It's not about the signs. It's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. Sometimes there are no signs. Where I live in Coweta County, and I know it's happened here, I drove through Spalding County and Pike County back a couple years ago. I think it might have been the same tornado. I don't remember. Remember the big one? Came through, just destroyed, ripped trees out of destroyed houses. Imagine for a moment that at a four-way stop, all the signs for the stop signs were torn down. Does that mean I don't have to stop? There's no sign. If I know there should be a sign there and there's not, because I'm aware of the circumstances, I'm going to be even more careful to stop. Because the relief truck that's coming down 54 may not know there's supposed to be a sign there, and he might not stop, and then someone might get hurt. So you see, it's not what you look at that matters. Oh, there's no signs, I'm just going to keep going. Oop, that's the wrong answer. It's what you see when there are no signs. So what do you mean? If there's no signs, there's nothing for me to see. What are the circumstances? You see, if we were in Psychology 101 class today, we would be talking about signs in one category, and we would say, oh, they're acting out, they're dropping out of church, or they're not doing the bowling league or the softball team anymore, or they quit playing the piano and just drop that. Whatever it is. And we categorize these and put them into the sign category. But then you also have to look at the risk factors. Those are two different things. But in this class today, I want to tell you that they're the same exact thing. Because sometimes there are no signs. Oh, then those are the ones that are going to die. Nope. Look at the circumstances. What are the circumstances? I'll give you an example. I had a first sergeant in the unit that I was in, and I asked him if he was having thoughts of suicide. And at first, because he's a first sergeant, he said no. But a month later, at the next drill, he came and knocked on my door and said, could we talk? And I said, sure. He said, do you remember what you asked me? I said, oh yeah. He said, how did you know? I didn't think I was putting out any signs. I'm the first sergeant. Well, you weren't. Well, then how did you know? Well, number one, you're a first sergeant in a training unit that demands that we do everything in a weekend that is the Army, regular Army does in a whole month. Literally, that's the way the reserves works. We have to do in one weekend what everybody else takes a month to do. Number two, I know that you were actually in the active duty and you wanted to stay active duty, and you've been deployed 3 times, and you've got a bronze star. I know that you wanted to stay in the active duty, but your wife told you to get out, or she wasn't going to stay with you, so you got out under that mandate. It's me or the military. And I know that a year after trying to work on a civilian job, because you're an Army guy, you didn't jihad really good with corporate America. I don't either. And so you got laid off, got your pink slip, and I know that last month your wife filed for divorce. I don't need signs. I got 5 or 6 circumstances that tell me that you're probably having thoughts of suicide, and that's the reason I asked you. I said, so are you having thoughts of suicide? He said, I have been for a while. And you kind of got my attention when you asked me. And I wasn't willing to say anything because I didn't know if you were going to report me or whatever. No, I wasn't going to report you. I'm the chaplain. There's a lot of things that I keep to myself. He said, can we talk about it some more? I said, sure. We went in our office, closed the door, had a conversation. That was about 10 years ago, and he's still alive today. Yeah, he did get a divorce, but he's remarried now, and he's actually cooking. He's a chef. He's doing what he always wanted to do if he wasn't doing military things. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So those are your 5 core values. It's not what you look at that matters. It's what you see when nobody else sees anything. Now, I have been to several funerals. We've got funeral directors here today, and I know that you guys have dealt with folks that died from suicide. We had a big suicide back years ago in my hometown, a very well-known person. I'm standing in line. It took 2.5 hours to finally get to the front of the line to convey my condolences to the family. I had several people that know what I do that came up to me, and they whispered in my ear, we didn't see this coming. How could one of the richest men in town take his life? We didn't see this coming. It's not what you look at that matters. It's what you see. And so when we see circumstances that are changing, and folks, today we all see circumstances that are changing, then we need to be having caring conversations with those around us. Doesn't mean that you're going to be asking everybody in the world, are they having thoughts of suicide? But we just want to engage with people because we care about people. We're going to have a caring conversation. My wife said, you know, you're 61 now, what are you going to do when you're just not able to teach anymore and stay at this high tempo that you're at? I said, well, I'm going to get a job as a greeter at Walmart. I'm going to ask everybody that comes in, are you having thoughts of suicide? Right? I might have a job for one day, but I'll be busy that day doing what I love to do, right? So it's not what you look at that matters. It is what you see. When nobody else can see anything. There's a great book that says, have eyes to see. To see. Don't worry about whether there's signs there or not. When you're aware of the circumstances, engage in a caring conversation. In fact, I'll say this. You know, Jesus said, an evil generation looks for signs. I'm telling you, sometimes there are no signs. So be aware of that and have eyes to see what other people are not willing to see. All right, very quickly, I'll just share my background on why I do what I do. This was what Fayetteville looked like on April 28, 1993. So that's been several years ago. It was during lunchtime. Some of you might recall this. I was sitting in McDonald's eating lunch with my wife and my 2 little boys. I've got 4 grown sons and 7 grandchildren now, but at the time I just had 2 little boys. All of a sudden I hear this crash, and a car had hit the tanker that was refueling at the gas station. So I went running out, couldn't get near the car. It was already engulfed in flames, couldn't save the guy. But ran back into McDonald's and told my wife, get in the car and get out of here. I stayed because my office was right there behind McDonald's at Hudson Plaza. And eventually they made us leave Hudson Plaza because gas was going everywhere and cars were catching on fire that was coming up through the manholes. So it was a rough day. But I didn't have any sleepless nights that night because I felt bad that I couldn't help the guy, but he was probably already dead when I tried to get to him. But I put together a Firefighters Appreciation Day in the parking lot a week later, and the chief said, "Why are you doing this?" I said, "Well, I'm an Army chaplain in the reserves. I run this office here, this brokerage firm." "Well, you want to be our chaplain?" "Sure, I can do that." So he said, "You're in real estate. You've got plenty of time on your hands. You can do it, right?" He gave me a pager. I started showing up on the scene of stuff. We did fight a couple of fires. And fire never really bothered me that much. I was kind of like a little pyro when I was a kid anyway, right? I loved to play with fire and build fire and, in the backyard and burn things for my dad when I was a kid. And so I really wasn't traumatized, or at least I didn't think I was traumatized. There's this thing called rolling post-traumatic stress. It just kind of builds and builds and builds. And you don't think that one's going to be a problem, but the second one adds, and the third one adds, and the fourth one adds, and then it builds up. And so my rolling post-traumatic stress took a lot of time to build up. And so it was not until October of 2009 that it blew up on me. Literally. My 13-year-old son, who wasn't even born back then, he was in the backyard doing what I used to do as a kid, burning stuff. I said, "Yeah, go burn that pile for me." I was a real estate broker in 2009, but what was going on in 2009? Anybody remember? It was not a good year to be in real estate. I had 30 agents that had worked for me. They were all left. It was just me and my wife. We'd sold the farm that we were planning to move back to, or move to one day. I had dropped my medical insurance because I couldn't afford it. And I was just saying a prayer every night, don't let anybody get hurt, right? And so in October of 2009, my third son made the front page of the Noonan Times-Herald, 13-year-old burned in backyard fire. He had gone into the barn and gotten some accelerant and threw it on the fire, and it blew up on him, burned him over 90% of his arms and half his face. My wife was at the grocery store. I was at home on Monster.com looking for a job, and when it blew up, it rattled the sunroom windows, and I'll never forget that sound of shboom. And I looked out the window. My son's running through the woods screaming, and he had to be life-flighted to Grady. This happened on my watch. I was responsible for my son. And my wife that night stayed at Grady. My other kids, the three boys, they were at Grandma's house. I was at home all by myself, had never in my life had a thought of suicide. And that night, for the first time in my life, I thought, it wasn't go kill yourself. My thought, my family would be better off without me. That was my thought. I wasn't thinking about suicide. I was thinking my family will be better off without me. And from a monetary, financial standpoint, they would have been. I got in my little locker in that's in my closet, pulled out my life insurance policy. It was worth $1 million. I bought it when the kids were little. I started reading through all the exclusion clauses. They had all expired. It was a 15-year-old policy. And so the suicide clause is good for about 3 years. I knew that my wife would get $1 million if I was dead. I made the decision that I would not kill myself. Actually, I'm not here today to sell my book. If you want a book, I do have a couple of copies. But this is on the back of my book. No one would ever know his death in the desert was a suicide. I had been out of the military for several years. I made the decision in my mid-40s to go back into the military. They gave me my rank back, and I went back in. I was hoping to deploy with the 48th Brigade that was headed to the desert. And I was getting all my paperwork up, and the Army messed up my paperwork, and they deployed without me. And so the recruiter, he said, well, I've got a training unit. I said, training units don't deploy. Now, obviously, I had not told them I want to go in so that I can go to the desert and get killed and come home, and my wife will get my retirement for the rest of her life, plus the $1 million, plus $400,000 from the Army. She'll be well off. I didn't tell them that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten in. But I said, training units don't deploy. Well, go ahead and take this unit, and then you can start shopping for a deploying unit. So I took the unit. And folks, how many of y'all, I've got to ask this question. How many of y'all, just very quickly, believe in divine intervention? Most of us here. Well, first of all, the military messed up my paperwork. I was upset. What's going on here? That was the first step. And then they said, well, if you want to take that training unit, you got to go and interview with the colonel. So I went and sat down with Colonel Frank Eubanks. He's now a very dear friend of mine. First words out of his mouth, he said, Chaplain, if you decide to take this job, I want you to think about suicide. What? Excuse me, sir? I thought I had it written on my forehead or something. I'm like, does he know something? He said, and here he says, I want you to think about suicide because we got soldiers killing themselves, and I need for you to be the man that does something about it. I call that, folks, divine intervention, because he sent me off to Fort Jackson, South Carolina to get trained in suicide intervention. I've got a doctorate in counseling. I'd never had any training in suicide intervention. None. None. Most clinicians haven't, or they have very little, y'all know. And so I'm at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, learning suicide intervention, and I'm a suicidal soldier. And we had to go down to Charleston Air Force Base to do dignified transfers. Do y'all know what that is? It's where the caskets roll off the back of the airplane, and we go through these exercises of caring for the wounded and honoring the dead and things like that. It's a tough, emotional morning. So before our team headed back to Fort Jackson, hey, we're going to go by the USS Yorktown and eat on the boat. It's an old ship that you can tour, and you're going to get to eat lunch that day with a Medal of Honor recipient. Oh, wow, from World War II, that's great. And so I called my oldest son, who's an airman at Charleston. I said, hey, can you break away, come to lunch on the Yorktown, and I think you'll be able to sit at the table with a Medal of Honor recipient. Because everybody was Army, he's Air Force, so hey, let the Air Force guy sit with me too. And that's exactly what happened. So I'm sitting at the lunch table on the ship in the mess hall with World War II Medal of Honor guy, my son, who's 19 years old at the time. And then we got through, and we're taking a quick tour of the Yorktown. And my son pulls me over to the side. He'd had 2 hours of intervention training, compliments of the Air Force. See, this is why training is so important. You will always default to the level of your training. And that's exactly what he did. Because he says, Dad, I know you had to file bankruptcy. The Army gave you a hard time getting back in because you have to go through an FBI background check, right? Most of the time, they're not going to let an officer come back into the military after bankruptcy, but it was all because of medical bills. And they could see that. They knew that I'd been in real estate, and the real estate economy had crashed, and I had gone in under very false pretenses, but I told them I wanted to serve my country. I'm a chaplain. I don't even get to carry a weapon. There's no way I can hurt anybody. So, they hit the box and said, yep, you can go in. But I know you had trouble, Dad, trying to get back in. I know you feel responsible for Chad. He's just lining it up for about what he's going to ask me. Y'all see how this is going? He's lining it up. He's setting it up. He's taking that bat that he learned and he's getting in the plate and getting ready to swing. I know that you feel responsible for Chad. I know that you wanted to deploy with the 48th Brigade, and you said you were interested in going to the hottest spot you could. So, Dad, just based on everything that you've told me, I've got to ask you a question, Dad. Are you having thoughts of suicide? My 19-year-old son said that. There was a moment of silence. He said, you have had thoughts of suicide, haven't you? I didn't say anything. He knew. I said, yeah, I have. He said, Dad, don't do it. I need you in my life. Now, I'm not going to take the time to go into a lot of detail here, but he said, Dad, do you remember when I was 15 years old, you took me on a man walk? You did that with all of my brothers, and I got to do it with each of my brothers, and the one after me got to do it with his brother. And you said, I want you to learn a life verse that'll carry you through life. And you told me what yours was. Could you just tell it to me today? And you don't have to give me every verse. Could you just tell me the first verse? It's the 46th Psalm. Folks, I want to tell you, before I even spoke the word was speaking to me. If you don't know the 46th Psalm, the first verse is simply this: God is my refuge and strength, a very present help in time of trouble. He said, Dad, you've been going through some trouble. God's there with you, and I'm going to be there with you. And about a moment later, the first sergeant's yelling for the team to get back on the bus. I'm going 90 miles up the road to Columbia, South Carolina. I'm thinking about the interaction that I just had. And the next morning, there's a knock at my door, and it was usually the first sergeant because I was old to go back into the military. I kind of had this thing with the first sergeant. He called me the old man. And I said, I thought that was the colonel's title. He said, no, you're older than the colonel. But it wasn't the first sergeant. At 5 o'clock in the morning, it was my oldest son who'd gotten permission to leave Charleston at 3:30 in the morning to be at Fort Jackson to run PT, physical training, with the U.S. Army. He's an airman. He ran with the Army that day. On every installation, military base, whatever that base is, there's always a hill. And it may not be the official name of that hill, but every hill, the steepest hill, is called Suicide Hill. And we're running up Suicide Hill at Fort Jackson. I'm way in the back because I'm the old man, but my son was right beside me. And he never left me that day. He went through all the training with me. And at the end of the day, he said, Dad, you know, one of the reasons I knew you were in trouble is because you weren't working out anymore. I've always worked out. I started working him out when he was 12 years old. His brother that got hurt, my third son, I trained him to a national powerlifting championship 2 years after he got burned. So that tells you Chad's doing good. Chad's in the Air Force now. He has to be careful in the sun. He's got some skin damage on his arms. His face is fine. He's got a beautiful wife and a 3-year-old son. And he's doing good. But my son stayed right beside me. He never left my side. And so, you know, back then I had a hard time dreaming of a future. And I would tell you today, right now, this is my dream. That one day a boy will ask his father, Dad, what was suicide? That's what I want, for us to be able to put it behind us. Are we going to do that in this lifetime? No, it ain't going to happen. Suicide's been with us since man first started walking on the face of the planet. It will continue to be with us, but can we curb it in our lifetime? Maybe not in the grand scheme of things, but I believe that we can in our little microcosm of friends and families. We can make our family safer. We can make our community safer. We can make our unit. The 4th Brigade went for 8 years with no suicides. So we can make a difference. Not for everybody, but for some. You know the old story of the starfish. I can't save them all, but I can save this one. And that should be our attitude. So that was 2011. A year later, I formed Armed Forces Mission, which is now Stop Suicide USA. 30,000 people have now been trained, and it's all because my son asked me the question that most people will never ask, which is what? Are you having thoughts of suicide? You've got to ask that question. All right, very quickly, are we doing okay on time, Mike? Good. So let's jump in. I think this is page 7 on our guide, I believe. Is that right, Greg? All right, so let's jump in. Risk are in the circumstances of life that a person finds himself in. It does not mean that the person is thinking of suicide. It just means that the potential is present. So what do you mean by that? Well, some people are going through divorce and they're suicidal. I had one soldier, though, I asked him if he was having thoughts of suicide, and he was going through divorce, and he shared a few expletives. And he said, "No way, chaplain." He said, "Sorry, chaplain, I know you're the chaplain. I shouldn't have said that, but I'm not having I've been praying for 3 years that she would leave me. I realized in 3 months I made a mistake. In fact, I'm having a keg party tonight if you want to come bless the keg for me." So you can't rubber stamp it and cookie cut it so that, well, if they're going through this, then they're going to be suicidal. And everybody is. No, we're all different. We're all unique. But we need to understand that the potential is there. And so one of the ways I describe that is sort of like the idea of kids making a pound cake. And I know that doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to explain it to you right quick. A few years ago, well, it was actually 10 years ago this year, we had a suicide in my hometown 2 days before school let out. 17-year-old boy took his life. About 2 weeks after, several of the parents of his friends, he had 6 or 7 friends that he was really close to, and they all said, "Would you get together with us and our kids on a Saturday morning and kind of do a debrief with us to make sure our kids are okay?" That's good. They're a very proactive parent in that regard. Sure, I'll be glad to do that. So I showed up on a Saturday morning about 10 o'clock. There are several parents there. All the kids are there, 6 best friends. But there was one couple with their son that wasn't there. And I asked the host, I said, "Where is so-and-so?" And she whispered to me, "Well, they aren't coming because I talked to her last night and she said our child would never be suicidal. So we're not going to come to that." And I said, "That's like saying my child doesn't know how to make a pound cake." And I know that doesn't make sense. So let me explain it to you real quick. First of all, for you guys, I can cook brisket, but I don't know how to make a pound cake. What are the ingredients in a pound cake? Anybody? Flour, butter, eggs, sugar, vanilla, sour cream. Oh, there you go. Lemon, eggs again. Pound of love, anybody? Does that work? Throw that in there. So you got all these ingredients that go into making a pound cake, and the mom says, "Yeah, but my son doesn't know how to make a pound cake." Ma'am, you missed the point. Because if the ingredients are on the counter of his life, y'all hear me? If the ingredients are on the counter of his life, then he might stumble through the kitchen with all this stuff on his mind, and he can make a mess. He doesn't have to know how to make a pound cake. There can still be a mess. And so now what we're doing today is we're trying to figure out, why did the mess happen? It's called suicide forensics. And I hate that word. Because what that means is that somebody got killed, somebody died, and we're trying to figure out why it happened. It's no different from homicide forensics. It's the reason that they put a yellow tape, and even at a suicide scene, the yellow tape is around the house until we can figure out, was this a homicide or was this self-inflicted? And so I hate that word forensics, because I'm trying to figure out what didn't have to happen, but did. And so now we're looking at this, and you know what all the parents were saying? We didn't see this coming. We didn't see it coming. And one of the boys, he's about 6'4", redheaded kid, he jumped up off the floor. He's sitting right next to me, and he said, "Shut up." And his mother looked at him and said, "What's wrong, son?" He told me he was going to kill himself. He showed me where he's going to kill himself. And that's exactly what he did. And that young man had spent the whole weekend trying to make sure that his friend was going to be okay. And he thought he would be. But on a Sunday night, early Monday morning, he took his life. So what were the ingredients in this young man's life? Well, number one, he's a teenager. Does that put him at risk? 1 out of 4 or 5 teenagers are having thoughts of suicide right now, and 1 out of 10's got a plan. So yeah, he's a teenager. The number 2 cause of death for teenagers, by the way, is suicide. It's the number 2 cause of death. In the state of Utah, it's actually the number 1 cause of death. Isn't that interesting? So he's a teenager. Number 2, his mom and dad are getting a divorce. Could that be an ingredient? You see, it's not about the signs, it's about the ingredients. It's the circumstances. Ingredients and circumstances are the same thing. And so, teenager, mom and dad getting a divorce. He hears them arguing at night about the fact that he didn't qualify for the Hope Scholarship. Does that put him at risk? He's not going to be able to go to Georgia with all of his friends because his SAT scores weren't good enough. Does that put him at risk? I mean, we're building here, aren't we? He's having to move out of ritzy Peachtree City to South Georgia because they can't afford to stay in Peachtree City if Dad's not in the picture. So, Mom, you're making me leave my friends in my senior year, and now I got to go to another school in my senior year? Does that sound like an ingredient? What about my girlfriend? Is she going to stay with me? Probably not. Am I going to be first string on the football team? I'm just now finding out that I'm going to a new school and it's May. No, that was determined last season. You're not going to be first. You might get to play if they're way up, but you're not going to be first string. No, I really doubt it. Oh, and by the way, not only is Dad moving out of the house, but he's moving to Europe. So in his mind, which is not fully developed, Dad must really hate me. Y'all see what I'm saying? Now, how many ingredients on the kitchen counter does it take to make a mess with all the ingredients in your pound cake? How many ingredients does it take to make a mess? One. Just one ingredient. You can make a mess with eggs. You drop a bag of sugar, you're going to have ants all year. Any of these ingredients all by themselves can make a mess. How many did he have in his life? Man, he's eat up. Folks, I don't need any signs to tell me this young man is in trouble. Somebody needs to help him. His best friend knew it because his best friend was told how he was going to do it. The problem is that the young man did not have the knowledge to know that he needed to be telling somebody who could do something about it. This is the segue for you guys tonight when you go home and eat dinner with your family or tomorrow morning at the breakfast table. Hey, I was in a class this morning or yesterday and we were talking about suicide. Have you ever had any friends that were suicidal? Oh yeah, Mom, all the time. Oh yeah, Dad, all the time. What do you do when they say that to you? Well, we just try to help them. Well, here's what I want you to do from now on. I want you to let me know. Oh, Dad, they'll be mad at me. Let me know. If you see something, say something to me because I don't want that on you for the rest of your life. Oh, they'll be mad at me, Dad. I would rather them be mad than dead. And they'll get over mad. You don't get over dead. You're gone. So if you see something, say something. Let me tell you how important this can become. We had a young man during the holidays. It was the day after Thanksgiving. You're out of school on Thursday and Friday. Got a long weekend. And he killed himself Monday morning. This is a different boy. This is not the one I was just talking about. Killed himself on Monday morning before school. His best friend also had been told in the way it started off, hey, if you don't see me back after Thanksgiving, you know why. Now, he didn't come up to him and say, hey, I'm going to kill myself this weekend. He said, if you don't see me, and they had been talking, he knew he was depressed, he knew he was going through some stuff. If you don't see me on Monday morning after Thanksgiving, you know why. Well, that's code, folks, right? That's code. And so he had spent the whole weekend trying to help his friend, thought he'd gotten him through the weekend, and he killed himself on Monday morning. I was at the scene that morning because the police called me. Well, when is Thanksgiving? November. That was November. In January, I get a call from a mother who says that one of the boys is in trouble. One of the boys is in trouble. Well, it was the boy who had been told, I'm going to kill myself. And he had texted his friend and said, the voices are telling me to end it all. The good thing is that the mother had been in my class and she went home and drilled her kids, if you see something, say something. And so her 15-year-old son said, Mom, look at this text message. What do you think? She said, I think we need to do something about it. And she called me. And we were able to intervene at 11:30 at night in Peachtree City. And the neat thing is this. The police showed up because I don't like knocking on the door at 11:30 at night, so I let them knock on the door, and he stepped back and introduced me. It was a Korean family. And here's the interesting thing about culture. If the police show up at your house at 11:30 at night, all of a sudden you can't speak English. So she was acting like she couldn't speak English. And I'm talking to the boy because that was his best friend that died in November. I had met him at the funeral and all these other things. We did a lost walk on behalf of his friend that had died. It's local outreach to suicide survivors. So he knew who I was. And I'm assuming that Mom don't speak English. And I said, well, could we speak privately? He talked to his mother in Korean, and she walked away. And he said, oh, by the way, she understood every word you were saying. And I said, so you're having thoughts of suicide? He said, yeah. I said, well, I'm glad I'm here. But it was because his friend had killed himself and he didn't know how to handle it. So guys, go home tonight. Talk to your kids or your cousins or your grandkids or your nieces and nephews and say, look, if you ever see something, say something. And if you ever feel that way, don't keep it to yourself. Be really, really, really courageous and let me know. Or let somebody know. Y'all got that? Everybody got it? So take it home with you tonight and make that happen. All right, so be alert. Be very alert to, and this is not exhaustive, but just some of the things. Failed relationships, family history of suicide. Think of the Hemingway, for example. Ashley was struggling because she had a family history of suicide. Poor social skills, financial stress, that was one of mine. I mean, we had to file bankruptcy. And literally, my family would have been better off without me financially. But I look back on that today and I go, how could I have possibly thought that? How could I have possibly thought that? All right, so let's go through this little simulation. I've been doing all the talking, right? I've been doing all the talking at this point. I want you guys to dialogue with me. So, I want you to imagine that one night you get a call. I'm going to kind of put it in a context that maybe the most of us could relate to. Let's just say it's somebody that moved to Pike or Spalding or, south side of Atlanta. You're somewhere in the Southern Crescent, and you guys have become friends. And let's just say he's from Philadelphia, and maybe it's your next door neighbor. And you've done a lot to introduce him to people. Maybe y'all played on the church softball team together. You got him to come to your church, or you got him a job as a volunteer firefighter. What? I don't care what, but you know each other. And you've been very helpful to him. And he calls you one night at 9 o'clock. And so the first question is this. The phone rings. So how do you answer the phone? Anybody? Ring, ring, ring. Hello. Greg said it. Hello. Hello. And he responds Hey, I just wanted to say thank you for everything you've tried to do for me. Y'all hear that? I just want to say thank you for everything you tried to do for me. How do you respond to that? Who said that? Did y'all hear that? Oh, right up front, out of the chute. She done been to that class. She knows what to do. So yeah, you could say, are you having thoughts of suicide? Yeah, you could say that straight up front. Are you having thoughts of suicide? It may catch him off guard. Although in that situation, if he's reaching out to you, it's because he don't want to die. I know that ain't proper English, but it's one last ditch effort. He said, you've obviously helped him in the past, right? It may be you can help me again. And if you come out of the chute with that, there's nothing wrong with that. It might be a little fast, but thank you for offering that. We might need to segue a little bit, hey, what's going on? You doing okay? But no, this right here was a courageous lady. That's good. So 2 thumbs up. No, I'm not critiquing you. I'm just saying that's great. But we might want to do a little bit more rapport building. But I think the rapport's already there, right? It is. I mean, I'm very quick to ask the suicide question. A lot of people will not ask it at all. And so he says, oh, so we're going to run with it. You said it? Well, yeah, how did you know? And that's what he says. Yeah, how did you know? How do you respond to that?
It's 11:30 at night and you're calling me to say thank you.
Thank you. What's your name? Mary, thank you. Did y'all hear what she said? She says 11:30 at night, 9 o'clock at night, and you're calling me to say thank you for what you've tried to do for me?
Tried to do is the word.
Tried to do for me?
It sounds so final.
Yeah, sounds final. It's like, what's going on, right? And he says, I'm just tired. I'm just tired. What do you do then? Keep him talking, figure out what's going on. Yeah, you like to talk about it. Thank you. And
So
he,
there's options.
yep. So what else? What else do we need to know? Oh, thank you. Where is he? Well, tell you the truth, I'm up here on Oak and 3rd Street where that little girl got killed the other day. Oh, I'm good. I'm on the way. That's a good one. Do we keep them talking?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. So at this point, on a scale of 1 to 10, and I would say 1 is there's no thoughts of suicide, 5, I'm having thoughts of suicide, 10 is you're standing on the bridge or you have the gun in hand, right? So how do we determine what it is right now? So we don't see anything yet. We're on the way.
No, what does he see?
So, okay.
What do you see him?
So, well, I'm standing here with that little, I'm a volunteer firefighter now, and we got a call the other night, and little 3-year-old girl, she got thrown out of the car. That drunk driver hit her, and there's still some blood on the curb, and we couldn't save her. And it's just bothering me. So where do we go from there?
I would want to know if he had anything with him, like what's his plan?
Okay. So maybe say, how can we word that then? So you've got a plan right now tonight?
Yeah. I mean, people usually respond
Yeah.
with that, just 'cause
Yeah.
it catches them a little off guard.
Yeah. So he responds, because we're moving pretty quick in this conversation, right? He responds and says, I'm not sure how I would do that, but I'm just tired. I can't take this. And then he blurts out, did I ever tell you why I moved to Pike County?
Tell me about it.
Oh, that's good. Tell me about it. Let's talk about it. And so he says, well, I was full-time firefighter in South Carolina, and we got a call one afternoon. It was around 4 o'clock. School let out. And when we got there, it was my 6-year-old had gotten hit by a drunk driver when she was crossing the road. And I could not save my daughter's life. That kind of did a number on me and my wife. and her marriage went south, and we got a divorce, and I got an opportunity to come work for the airline here in Atlanta, and that's my life, and I'm just tired. So what do we do with that?
I hear what you're saying.
I hear what you're saying. I love that. Because you didn't say I understand. But we do have two ears. And I hear what you're saying. And when you say I hear what you're saying, in effect, I hear the pain. In other words, you just validated the pain in my life.
I'm sorry for your loss.
I am so sorry for your loss. I am so sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Well, that's simulation number 1 there. You guys did good. Y'all did better than any class I've ever seen before. We jumped right into the middle of it. A lot of classes, they're like, man, I'm not asking it. No, you asked it really quick. That's good. I'm excited about that. All right, so let's keep going. This is a very redacted instant message that I got 2 years ago from a friend of mine who was also an Army chaplain and lives up in the Northeast. And so I'm just very quickly, it's very redacted, so I just want to highlight some of the things. He sent me a Facebook message. It's about 11 o'clock, well, it's 11:50 at night. And he said, he's in Afghanistan, got home from that. He had to be deployed for the Capitol riots. After that, he had to be deployed for the COVID mission. The Northeast was really big on deploying National Guard. After that, he was in the hospital twice. And this guy is huge. He's the only chaplain I know that ever bench pressed 500 pounds. So that's pretty strong. And so after the hospital, he said, I can't even walk 50 feet. He says, the soldiers used to look up to me. They don't do that anymore. He says, I'm broken, physically broken. I've thought about just ending it all. The old addiction of alcohol has come back. I'm completely lost. I don't know how much longer I can go on. I get this on Facebook instant message at 11:50 at night. What do you think I did? I called him immediately. I called him and he answered. You know why he answered? Core value number 1. He didn't want to die. I've never met anybody that really wanted to die. And so if they're reaching out, they are looking for hope. They're looking for hope. Give me one last ditch effort. I'm going to reach out to the suicide guy. He'll certainly be able to help me. I called him back immediately. Now, he's 1,200 miles away. And we took a few minutes to catch up. Hey man, I ain't seen you in 10 years, right? Man, it's good to hear your voice. So, and we talked about lifting weights. I said, yeah, I'm trying to get back in shape. I said, but let's talk about what's going on. You having thoughts of suicide? Yeah. Because of everything you've been through. I hear you. I hear you. Do you have a plan? Yeah, I could use a weapon. You know when you're going to do that. No, I really haven't thought that through. So then you're safe tonight. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Because what I'm thinking is that you're just looking for hope. That's what I'm thinking. You wouldn't have called me if you weren't looking for hope. And the problem is I'm 1,200 miles south of here. Otherwise I'd get in the car, but it's going to take me about 14, 15 hours to do it. Can you stay safe tonight? I think so. Well, if you're not sure, I need to call the Maryland State Troopers and get them over to your house for a welfare check. Oh, no, there's no need to do that. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. All right, I tell you what, it's 1 o'clock in the morning now. Why don't you get some sleep? I'm tired and I'll call you about 10 tomorrow. And that's what I did. Now, he didn't answer the phone at first, and that scared me to death. So I'm on Facebook trying to Facebook his wife and instant message her. And but he called me back 2 minutes later. He said, man, I know I probably scared you. But he said, I was putting some boxes in the car for my daughter to go back to school. Well, how are you doing today? Man, I'm doing a lot better. I'm a lot better. Thanks for listening to me last night. You see, suicide's not the result of wanting to die. It's a thought. But if somebody's willing to listen to us, then we can move away from it. We don't have to stay there. We do not have to stay there. We're going to go ahead and watch this video now. I want you guys to pay very close attention to everything that's being said. Let me explain the situation here. Lucy has just returned to town after being gone for a month due to the loss of her husband and her child in a boating accident. That happens on lakes all across the country every year. Lucy has no family living within 300 miles. She was actually from Bolivar, Missouri. This was an actual scenario. Somebody had been in my class and called me about 2 weeks later and said, you're not going to believe this. I said, try me. And he shared with me the verbatim of the conversation. I said, put it in writing. And he did that. And so for several years, I would pick somebody, I'd say, hey, you read this script with me. And in 2020, when everything was shut down up there at the movie studios, you know Georgia's now the movie capital of the South, right? So some of the actors called me and they said, can we do anything for you? And so they put that script to a video. They didn't call it a video, they called it a film. That's what professional actors call it. So that kind of makes me a producer, so I'm really excited about that. Tyler Perry has not yet called me for anything. Tyler lives here in Atlanta, right? So, but I want you guys to listen to this because this is so powerful. But John Dixon, the actor, he called me in December after recording this in August of 2020. He said, can you meet me at Malone's up on Virginia Avenue near the airport? I said, sure. He said, I want to buy your lunch. I said, no, man, I need to buy your lunch. He said, no, you don't understand. I didn't know anything about suicide intervention. Nothing. But you spent 8 hours with us recording a 10-minute video, and you coached me along, and I read the script, and I memorized it. He said, I've used that script almost virtually verbatim in helping 3 people in the past 3 months. And one of them you would know because he's on the big screen. So I want you guys to listen to this film, and then we may take a lunch break after that, and after lunch we'll come back and talk about it, okay? So listen to this, and immediately after lunch or after the film, go ahead and take your break, get ready for lunch. It should be here by then.
What time was that fundraiser again? And Lucy would probably know, and probably should check up on her.
Hello?
Hey, Lucy, it's Jim.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's good to hear your voice. And we've all been thinking about you.
Thanks, Jim.
And, listen, I want you to know how sorry I am I wasn't able to attend the memorial service in Bolivar. I really wanted to be there, but this Dubai contract has my hands tied, and I just got back stateside myself.
It's okay, Jim.
If there's anything that I can do to help you get caught up, I'm here for you.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that.
And, you know, a few of us are getting together tomorrow for lunch, you know, discuss our part in the Children's Hospital fundraiser. Would you maybe want to come?
I'm sorry, Jim. I wouldn't be much help to the team if I was there.
No pressure at all. I just know that everyone would love to see you. And besides, it's at your favorite, Capitol Grill. Lucy?
I appreciate that, Jim. I really do. I just haven't decided when I'm coming back, and I just got back to Atlanta last night, and I want to sleep in tomorrow.
Well, how well have you been sleeping?
I don't. I toss and turn all night, and then I spend the next 3 hours staring at pictures on social media.
You have been through so much. I can't even imagine what you're going through.
Everything is so confusing. My husband is gone. My precious little Tyler is gone. I don't want to be here anymore.
Have you talked to a counselor or your pastor?
No. I just talked to John's mom, and she's not doing well. I've tried everything to comfort her, and nothing helps.
I know it is difficult for her too. I mean, it's not natural losing a son and a grandchild. But Lucy, I'm concerned for you. A few moments ago you said that you didn't want to be here. What do you mean?
I feel like nothing really matters anymore. Work doesn't mean anything without a family to come home to. And I just come home to this empty house, and without them, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anymore.
Lucy, with all that has happened and based on what I'm hearing you say, I know from personal experience that when you have been through a traumatic experience like this, that sometimes you have thoughts of suicide, and it's making me wonder, are you thinking of suicide?
Would it be such a bad thing if I was?
So you have had thoughts of suicide?
I would be lying if I said no.
Lucy, you have been through so much, and you are in so much pain. I can hear it in your voice, and all honesty, I don't know what I would do if I were in your shoes. But you said when you're up late at night, is that when you're having these thoughts?
That's when they're the strongest, but to tell you the truth, it's been a constant thought since the day of the accident.
Are you safe right now?
I don't know how to answer that.
Do you have a plan?
A plan?
Yeah, a plan. A plan on how you would end your life.
Was, you know, John was a hunter, and he taught me how to use his guns.
Do you know when you would do this?
The 20th has crossed my mind.
20th.
Yeah, the 20th is it's Tyler's birthday.
A moment ago, you said that you don't want to be here. Lucy, I need you to know that I'm scared for you. And I don't want you to end your life. What can we do to get you in a better place?
I'm not sure, honestly.
Well, how about I text Susan? And Susan can be there in 10 minutes. And then I can be there in 20.
I'll be all right. You don't really need to do that, Jim. You don't. I'll be all right.
I know. I know that. But you have been holding it together for a month now. And the only person that you have talked to is John's mom, and she needs you as much as you need her, but Lucy, you need someone right now. I know you will, but I want to make sure that you're being kept safe. Do you mind if I hold on to John's guns until we figure out the next step?
Okay.
And Lucy, I need you to know that the thoughts that you are having are normal. And especially after everything that you've been through, suicidal thoughts are really normal. But I think that there is a part of you that wants to keep living.
How do you know that?
Well, I'm just guessing at this point. But I can't help but wonder if John were here talking to me right now, you would want him to keep living, am I right?
Without question.
That's what I thought. So let's do the same thing that you would want to do for John if you were here.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Susan is on her way, and she'll be there shortly. But let's just keep talking on the phone until she gets there, okay?
Okay. Okay.
You and me, just watching the stars. My favorite place is where you are. I was searching for a feeling that's true, but your love turned it all around. I put my faith